Hey, my name is Neil.
And my name's David.
We are not film critics. In this week's episode, we will be talking about Loki. The MCU show. So, I guess, David, first impressions?
Well, going into the show, I actually had pretty low expectations because I've full disclosure, I've never been a fan of Loki the character. I know a lot of people like him, but I've just never been a fan. He always seemed kind of like just the jealous brother type, and there's been a lot of that stuff, and he never seemed to really grow out of that. And I find him most entertaining as a character when he's like Thor's sidekick. When he's a sidekick to other characters. But I didn't think he could hold his own as a show, right? And I was partly right because they do pair him with other people for a lot of the show. He's never on his own for long, you know. But once I finished the show, I think overall I liked it. It was a good show. I think it started off strong. It got weak in the middle part. I wasn't very invested in the middle part, but by the end it had a really good finale. And I think overall how good the finale is and how good the ending is of the show kind of made the whole show sit better with me, because it's an ending that definitely makes you think about, wow, look at all they could do from here, and it really gets you speculating. I think that's a really good thing to do with a TV show.
Right. I think I'd have to say, going into the show, I had very high expectations. Just because I watched the two previous shows that came before Loki, which was WandaVision and Captain America and the Winter Soldier, which were actually, which we talked about in season 1. Go listen to that after you listen to this episode. Anyways, so yeah, I had very high expectations because I really like those two shows a lot. I thought they made it great, and Loki did not disappoint. The Loki honestly did not disappoint me. I don't think I actually watched the trailer for the show, but I guess I dove into it head on, and I really loved it. Episode 1 and episode 2, they captured my attention and really wanted me. It made me want to watch more. I do agree that in saying that the middle parts of the show got a little bit weak, especially episode 3. I didn't really like episode 3, but it had a great beginning and a very solid ending.
I also agree with that. I think one thing that you can definitely say with this Loki show is that I feel like Marvel should stop doing the thing they're doing right now on Disney Plus, where they release the TV shows a week at a time. I think that is really hampering. Because obviously when you release it, let's say there's 6 episodes in Loki season 1, and you release that over the course of 6 weeks, that's 6 weeks of content, right? And that's obviously way more valuable to 6 hours of content, which the Loki show is. It's 6 hours of content, right? And so I think they're trying to stretch out a TV show that isn't meant to be stretched out. It's basically a 6-hour movie, this TV show, right? And I've watched a couple reviewers, I've listened to what they've said, and they say that the viewing experience of the show is really, it's enhanced by watching it all back to back to back, because I watched the show as it came out. I watched it 1 week, and then I waited a week, and then another episode. I waited a week, and then another episode. And I feel like they really dragged it out, because sometimes, episodes, they didn't do anything, they barely move the plot forward, while other times episodes they didn't really have a satisfying conclusion because they kind of felt like they were cut off in the middle of their the middle of their climax, and that can kind of feel unsatisfying to an audience. And I feel like from here on, I think Marvel should just release their shows all at once. It'd also be better for me because I can watch it. I can watch it over the course of 2 days or 3 days instead of watching it over the course of 2 or 3 months.
Exactly, yeah, that's very unsatisfying for me as well. I had that experience with the WandaVision, but with the Loki, I actually waited until they had all 6 episodes released, and I just watched them all back to back to back to back, which was a lot of binge watching, but it was better that way, to say the least. Because a lot of the times, actually, the ending of, let's say, episode 1 stretched into episode 2, and so on and so on and so on. And so if you have to wait a whole week, to watch what's going to happen next, you get tired of it, right? You don't want to. It's like you have to wait. You have to wait 5 minutes until you get to eat again. I don't I don't want that because it's interesting for me. I really want to watch it. I want to watch it now, and I don't want to wait a whole week for just to know what happens next. That I guess they try to make it as if it was on TV, but it's honestly just on a streaming service that's accessible anytime, and it wouldn't hurt just bringing all releasing all out in one day, just like how Netflix does with some of their shows.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Now, I want to zoom in into Loki the show a little bit here. So, uh, episode 1 and episode 2, as I mentioned earlier, I love the episodes. Right, those two episodes, I think it did a great job in really getting audiences to watch, and I felt like sometimes, well, in the beginning, I felt like they just threw everything at you, but they hid so much, yet revealed so much that you still want to watch. You know what I mean? Especially in episode 2. Episode 2, I think it was just, especially like the latter half of episode 2, they kind of just gave everything right at you, and then that sets up the plot for the next 4 episodes, which were very different actually from the first 2 episodes. I really like the first 2 episodes, and it really did a great job in capturing an audience.
I don't know. I kind of like the first step, like the opening and the closing to the series are both like very good.
Yeah.
Because like they're very interesting like concepts that we haven't really seen before in the Marvel universe, right? Like I think we should do a deep dive into the ending later, but like the first episode introducing like the TVA and all that stuff, like it's a lot of exposition, but it's interesting exposition because you also want to know what's happening, And like the ending, it's a lot of characters talking. The whole episode is basically 3 characters sitting in a room talking, but it's all very interesting, and so you never feel like bored or you never feel disengaged with the show.
So yeah, I guess the first 2 episodes, they're very action packed, in a sense. Not it's not like it's a lot of action, but it was enough for you to be engaged with the show. And then the last episodes, which we will talk about later on, really kept that same element of having not necessarily action, hands on hands action, but it kind of it does like a great job in making sure that you really did enjoy watching the show. And to be honest, I did enjoy watching the show. Let's talk about the middle part of the show, episode 3 and episode 4. What do you think, David?
I think that's where the show kind of falters. Because I think the opening and the closing are very good, but I think in the middle part, I feel like sometimes it wasn't as interesting as it could have been. Because the concept of, like what is it, Loki and his alternate self, Sylvie, like kind of bonding, and them trying to like what is it, kind of take down the timekeepers and trying to convince Owen Wilson, that's very interesting, And like that sound, like if you say it out loud, they're like, hell yeah, I'd watch that all day, right? But I feel like sometimes, because I was always more interested in the Loki plot than the side plot of Owen Wilson. I love Owen Wilson as an actor. He's like he's a very he's an actor that like I like to see him and stuff just because he's there. I don't know. Owen Wilson's one of those kind of weird actors where whatever he's in, he kind of makes it better. But for some reason in this, I didn't really find myself attached to his character, and I feel like he could have been like developed a bit more, because right now he's just all we know about him is that he wants a jet ski, and while that's very funny, it's that like all he can remember himself is that how much he wants a jet ski, but like I don't know, I feel like he could have been a more developed character, and I feel like it could have been better. It could have made us more could have made his plot, like his B plot, more intriguing, instead of like whenever we come back I have to roll my eyes and try to like, okay, it's fine, we'll get through this kind of thing.
Right, yeah. So I just want to talk about episode 3 real quick. As I said, I didn't really like episode 3. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to have that dynamic with Sylvie and Loki develop, but I didn't like how they did it. Because most of the times they were like 2 polar opposites, but so similar that they can't. So they're 2 very different characters, but they're technically the same, right? They have different goals and whatnot, and then you put them together. It's kind of like a juxtaposition, but they try to the show. I guess they try to make it. They try to make it work, and later on it did work. But episode 3 it was just a little too confusing for me.
I get that.
Because there were times where they'd be like, "Oh, look, we're this close. We're like friend. I trust you. You trust me." And then a scene after that, they're fighting, right?
Yeah.
I think they could have done a better job with that for sure, but I don't know. It didn't hit me off the right way.
For me, like for most of episode 3, like I get that they're trying to develop characters, and you can't, have any like characters. You can't have any stakes in a show without developing the characters and make sure the audience is like has some emotional connection to them. But I feel like it could have been done better here because oftentimes I don't know, because I don't know what it is, but I feel like something about their dynamic wasn't working in this episode. Well, later in the series, like especially in episode 6, which we'll get into later, like their dynamic really works, against like each other. One thing I will say about this episode, even if it is a bit disappointing, is I really like the ending sequence where they're trying to get to the spaceship and everything. It was all filmed in like one take, and it was all this stuff was going on, and the cliffhanger ending of it blowing up, like that was really good. I like that. A plus for effort.
Yeah. And then later on, it was revealed in episode 4 that they did cause the Nexus event, and so they had to be pulled back. Episode 4, actually, let's talk about episode 4 quickly. I felt like episode 4 was sort of like the part of the show that revived it, because in episode 4 everything is revealed to you. If that makes any sense, because as I said earlier, in episode 2 everything was revealed to you, right? The beginning part. When in episode 4 you get to see more, right? They I think it was the one with the what did they call again? The timekeepers, right? And then that ending of episode 4 was amazing, with the timekeepers being destroyed, and everybody in I guess the main cast of Loki, Loki, Sylvie, Morbius, and I forget her name, the judge. They find out that maybe the TVA is just a fake, right? And maybe the timekeepers aren't real, and so that's when they start actually looking for answers, right? To put it this way, I think episode 4 was kind of like the climax before the climax. So it's like if you have like a rising action, and then there's like if you had to put like a moment in the rising action where it was just that could have been a climax. I think that what would episode that's what I would explain episode 4 as. But I guess obviously later on it gets more interesting.
For me, episode 4, it was an interesting episode. I will give it that, but I feel like it was kind of end heavy. Like for most of the episode, Loki and Sylvie are just kind of like sitting around, like they're just trying to outsmart the TVA, and well, that's fine. I feel like it could have, like, I feel like the episode didn't need to be as long as it was, if that makes any sense. I know the episode is already like pretty, like it's not like it's trying to fill some time quota or something, like it's a CW show, but it's like I feel like it wasn't very compelling, the first part of it, where like they're like in the TVA. I feel like that wasn't very compelling. But when they actually like escaped the TVA and they were trying to get out, and they were they discovered that the timekeepers were all fake, and then Loki teleported into the land of the other like Lokis and all the pruned people. Like that was really interesting. I like that. I wish the whole episode was that, instead of them like being interrogated, and like it wasn't very interesting. It just wasn't very interesting for me.
I think what they tried to do was they tried to reveal more of Loki as a character, because they did put him in the time loop in which he had to admit that he'll never be alone, or sorry, he'll always be alone. And I think that's what they try to do, I guess, in the earlier parts of the episode, and again try to extend episode 3 with the showing us that Loki and Sylvie did develop that dynamic that they tried to develop in episode 3. But all in all, episode 4 was great. I really liked it. Now episode 5 and 6. David, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Episode 5 I thought was a really interesting concept. That him being pruned and being sent to what is it? The like the I don't know, like the end of time, the void, and then Sylvie and Sylvie prunes herself, and Owen Wilson gets pruned, and then like they all have to team up in order to like break out, and he meets a bunch of other Lokis, and then they all fight amongst each other. I thought that was a really interesting concept. The execution was a bit because I feel like there was more there to like talk about and more to there to like show than what they show in the episode, because they really only showed like a couple of variants of the Lokis. I would have loved to see like him it almost like like in a community of Lokis, not only just the Lokis not only the Lokis that are like fighting with each other, and like the Lokis like the hierarchy there, but maybe like a more variations, more variants of the Loki. That could have been really interesting. I feel like they should have explored that more, but they kind of just kept it to a couple scenes. They tried to focus on just a couple of Lokis. And while it was very funny when like all the Lokis started betraying each other, and that was very funny. I thought it was very like classic Loki. But I feel like sometimes it was a bit too like there's too many coincidences in the episode. Like Owen Wilson just happens to show up as Sylvie comes, or I can't remember if it was Sylvie showing up with Owen Wilson or the other way around, or they find each other, or how exactly the void works. Because is it only Loki's there, or is it like everybody there? And then why do we only see Loki's if it's everybody? Like, or is it just everyone from like that specific sect? It doesn't make. I don't know. I feel like they could have explored that more, and they just decided not to, just for like time's sake. But sometimes it left me feeling confused about what was happening exactly.
Yeah, so I guess what you're trying to say is you wanted them to explore more on the setting.
Yeah.
Of the void and the I guess have more Lokis be introduced, right? Because again, there were only about 3-4 Lokis that were introduced in the void. As having like, let's say, at least a minor role, and then all the other Lokis, they were just kind of like extras. And yeah, I agree, because obviously Loki as a character is very interesting, and if they had explored on the different Lokis, it probably would have been a more entertaining episode. But yeah, I mean, I think episode 5 I guess I'd have like a neutral feeling about it. It did do, I guess, a great job in setting up for the finale and extending from the episode before. But I think it was just like, as you said, you wanted more, right? I wanted to see more as well, right? Because in my mind, when I was watching, I was wondering, what happens to the other people that were pruned, and how did these Lokis somehow survive? But they only said because Loki survived. Whatever. Okay. And yeah, obviously episode 5 was still great, And I guess let's move on to episode 6 now. Last episode.
I think before we discuss episode 6, we have to discuss the character of Sylvie. Like, what your personal take on her? Like, I think we gotta discuss that, because she's like the second major character, and I feel like she's a very important part of the series, and I just want to hear your take on that.
Okay, my take on Sylvie. I think, if anything, I think the show revolves around her.
Oh.
More than it does Tom Hiddleston's Loki. Just because most of the beginning parts was just, it was her that was setting up the plot, and in the end it was her goal that the two Lokis were trying to achieve. As a character, I think I don't know the actress's name, but I think she.
Let me see if I can find it. Hold on.
Yeah, I think she did a great job. Actually, she did a great job in. Do you have the name?
Yeah, I'm still looking. Hold on.
Yep, take your time.
Sophia DiMartino.
Okay, yeah. Sophia Di Martino, I think she did a great job in playing the role. She she encaptures Sylvie's character perfectly. And I think, you know, as it was mentioned in the show various times, she's different from all the other Lokis, right? Because as in episode 3, named Lamentis, there were times where Sylvie would be would be a I guess a better villain than Loki ever was. And then there were times in episode 5 where Sylvie was a better leader than Loki ever was. And I think Sylvie as a character was amazing, right? She's different from Loki. As I mentioned earlier, polar opposite of Tom Hiddleston's Loki. And again, I think the plot revolved around her goals, and she basically ran the show. Obviously, Tom Hiddleston's Loki was the main character, but as you said earlier, I think it was, they were just paired up, right? And she kind of carried a little bit of the more exciting parts of the show and the more compelling plots.
For me, I really like Sylvie. I did not expect her to like her as much as I did, because at first, when she was first introduced, like, I thought she was going to be just a generic Marvel villain, but she actually turned out to be a lot more. She actually turned out to be important. She, like, I don't know. Marvel keeps doing this trope of having its villains being right in the end, but killing them off anyway because they wanted to bomb a school or something. And I find that really dumb. But I like that she's right and she stays alive. And like Loki partners with her. It's not like a symbolic victory for her cause. No, it's like she is like going for it. And like how she's an actual complex character and she is really central to the plot. And it's nice to see a compelling female villain.
Okay, so while we're in the topic of characters, before we get into episode 6, do you want to talk a little bit about the other characters? I think you said a little bit about Owen Wilson's character's Morbius, and what was the other lady's name? Oh gosh, the judge.
Oh
the
God.
Judge. Let me search it up real quick. Ravonna. What do you think of Ravonna as a character?
I think she was fine. I mean, I don't know. She was okay, I guess, as like a villain to just kind of exist. So like Owen Wilson couldn't accomplish his goal. I feel like she was a bit inconsistent what she wanted to do, and then she just kind of like disappears and goes off, and like I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan. I felt like she was just kind of there to be a roadblock and not to actually be like a compelling villain. And so I don't know. I feel like they could have, not that they could have done better, because obviously like they couldn't have enough time to establish another villain, but maybe instead like have something more organic, like stop Owen Wilson rather than just his boss at work. And for Owen Wilson's character, I actually like, it's a bit simple. Like he's very like not one note, but he doesn't have much depth behind him. And then again, neither do any of the TVA characters because their minds have been erased. But I feel that's kind of a bit of an excuse. But even then, I like Owen Wilson as an actor. He brings a lot of life to his characters. And so I never like hated Morbius. And I thought it was enjoyable whenever he was on screen.
Right, yeah. For me, I think Ravonna, as you said, she was kind of just like a roadblock than an actual villain. I definitely feel the same thing. Feel the same way. Because I feel like they just didn't do a. They had like screen time for her, but her screen time were just weren't that good. She had a goal herself, but it was never shown, which I actually wanted to know. Right, like whatever happened to her. What did she do? What did she accomplish? It wasn't shown in the end. I think though the way it was set up, she's gonna be a character that's gonna be in the MCU for a little longer, just like Mobius, Owen Wilson's character, and what's her name? Sorry, Hunter B-15. Yeah, I think those three characters they were set up in a way that they're gonna be in the MCU for maybe a couple more shows, a couple more movies, and maybe play a better role than they did in this show. Now, can I just say one thing? Not, I did not, I did not. Sorry, how do I say this? When I was watching Loki early on, I didn't think Mobius was Owen Wilson. Yeah, bro. I thought it was someone else. He looked very familiar, though. He looked very familiar, but I think it was just the hair for me. The white hair, and then you see he usually has that swoop. He didn't have that in Loki, and I'm like, who is this guy? Why does he look so familiar? I didn't realize until I looked at the cast that it was Owen Wilson.
Wow, I can't believe you just forgot what Owen Wilson like. Jesus.
It was the hair, I'm telling you.
No, it shouldn't have been the hair. It should have been the mustache that tipped you off.
The mustache, yeah. The hair and the mustache. The hair and the mustache. Because he has that distinct facial structure, right? And then you slap on the mustache, you kind of don't see it a little bit. Anyways, yeah. So, you want to get
Let's
into
get into
episode 6?
episode 6. Episode 6, I think, changed this show. I think, but if episode 6 wasn't episode 6, if it was just kind of like a generic Marvel ending, like WandaVision or Falcon and Winter Soldier or anything like that, I feel like this show wouldn't have been as successful as it was. This show, it's not only is it like revolves around its ending, but it also changes everything else in the MCU around it. I feel like that's a really high praise to give for a 6-episode TV show, you know? And at the end of the show, because Kang, that's like the guy Kang the Conqueror, he kind of like not almost lets go, but when he dies, it feels foreboding. It feels like something's going to come after, and it feels very unsettling, even though the villain died. The villain, the bad guy died. That doesn't often happen in Marvel, where the bad guy dies and you feel unsettled, you know? Like, they did it in Endgame a bit. They did it, I think, in another movie. I can't remember. But, like, not often in Marvel movies does the villain die, like the big bad, and all of a sudden, like, you feel like, you know, like, what happened? What went wrong? You know? Like, you feel like you made a mistake. And I feel like the moral dilemma at the end was actually a really good moral dilemma, you know? And it was, what is it? It really sets up a lot of interesting questions of the MCU going forward. And I think that without, what is it, like this ending, and without like this like villain, and without without trying to, this show sets up a very compelling future for the MCU and sets up a lot of like future stuff where like crossing with alternate universes, and you know, like the villain, the big bad of Kang the Conqueror for Phase 5 and Phase 6 and stuff. And I feel like that'd be a really interesting villain because of how like absolute, like, because that villain is absolutely in control at all times. He knows exactly what's going to happen, you know, and that's kind of terrifying, especially, you know, with what is it, where like, you know, the heroes, sure, they time travel, you know, they time travel in Endgame, but they don't really have the control that he does. And I think it's a really interesting concept for a villain. I think it's going to make a really interesting MCU to explore in the next few movies.
Right, 100%. So when Endgame came out, you know, what was it, Phase 3, right? MCU Phase 3?
Phase 4.
Phase 4, sorry. No. When did Phase 3 end? Endgame, right?
Phase 3 ended after, I think, Spider-Man Homecoming.
Wow.
Or
okay,
maybe I'm
wow,
confused. Hold on. Let's check this out. Hold on.
Hold on, guys.
No, wait, you're right. I think you're right. Phase 3 is Endgame.
Okay, yeah, so when Phase 3 ended with Avengers Endgame, the MCU fans were questioning what's gonna happen next. You know, well how is, you know, what's gonna happen in the MCU, and how are the, I guess, the villains and the superheroes gonna be set up. And then come 2019 or 2020, when Marvel came out with this, with the plan. I think it might have been 2019 actually, with the plan for Phase 4, Phase 5, and Phase 6, and showing a bunch of shows and a bunch of movies releasing in the near future, and that's what they had planned out. People still didn't know what was gonna happen with MCU, right? And then I think this show Loki, with the ending that it had, that gives some answers, right? Loki, episode 6, it definitely sets up for MCU's future. Since now the timeline is broken and whatnot, and I think they mentioned having in different worlds being mixed together. I think that does Marvel did a great job, in setting up their future, and fans finally have something to look forward to. They have that big bad in Kang, and they're introduced to a bunch of different characters and having different movies, which they have 2 coming up later 2021, and then they had Black Widow, in the middle of 2021. Now I think without Loki, the ending of Loki, episode 6, people would still be, I guess, I don't want to say they wouldn't want to watch Marvel, but obviously it's Marvel. People want to watch Marvel, but people would still be clueless in what's really happening. With with the ending of Loki, I think they get a little bit of something to look forward to, now that everything is a little bit more clearer, because people didn't get really anything from WandaVision and Captain America, other than there are other sorcerers in the MCU, and the Falcon is now Captain America. But I think this Loki does a great job in setting up the future for Marvel. And it was a pretty good episode as well. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of it was just dialogue, but the dialogue was still good enough for you to watch.
Yeah, it was engaging dialogue.
Exactly. And again, Kang, I think he will make a great super villain, just because he can see what's happening. If anything, I think he sets up what's going to happen and allows what happens next. It's obviously going to be interesting when you go and when you put a bunch of superheroes and try to defeat basically the creator of the timeline, right? And I think Marvel, it doesn't disappoint. Well, it does disappoint sometimes, but Marvel, I think they do a great job in producing films and producing storylines. And again, Loki, I think this was probably the best ending in a show that was created by Marvel.
Yeah, I definitely. It's close. I think it's close.
Yeah. What do you think? What would be the other one though?
I mean, I'm kind of partial to the ending of Avengers: Infinity War. But,
Okay. Okay.
Whatever.
All right. Yeah. Avengers: Infinity War was interesting as well. Yeah. This was probably one of the best endings in anything Marvel created. Just because it sets up for the future of is it a company? Of the universe.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Of the Marvel universe, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Really great show. Fun to watch. And really engaging as well.
I think what makes it it's such an engaging show because it manages to make characters that I didn't really find interesting.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good way to put it.
Well, I think after way more time than I thought we would be talking about the Loki show, I think we finally ran out of things to say about it. Any final thoughts, Neil?
Nope. We're good.
Nope. We're good. Okay. Well, that's the end of this episode of Not Film Critics. We'll see you next time, and see ya.
Special thanks to Nicholas Biancalin. Make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel at The End Note, or you could follow him on Instagram at endnote_music. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at not.film.critics and on Twitter at nonfilmcritics for exclusive content and news.
See ya.